This video has been edited to shorten watch time by removing sidebars, evidence handling, and long pauses. Witness testimony remains intact, with minor cuts to hesitation words and stutters.
All right, Mr. Alessi, you all set?
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, if I may address the court. Mr. Brendan and I have agreed, as we did yesterday, to stipulate into evidence portions of Mr. Whiffin's March 2025 report. So if I could have it marked. Thank you. Morning, Mr. Whiffin.
Good morning.
And welcome back.
Thank you.
Approach, Your Honor.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Whiffin, I just handed you, which is in evidence as Exhibit 43. And this is a portion of your March 2025 report. If you could just take a moment to look at it, and when you've had a fair opportunity to do that, I'd ask you to turn to page 28. And just, if you could, sir, just pick up your head and let me know when you're ready to proceed.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Whiffin?
I am.
Thank you. So what I'd like to do is to, with Your Honor's permission, is to publish pages 28, 29, and 30 and start with page 28.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Mr. Whiffin, this summary section of your report is a summary of the location section that you wrote in your March 2025 report, correct?
That's correct.
And it states the location data on this device contains a vast number of records while traveling between 12/19/33 and 12/24/38. These records all have a high horizontal accuracy value as well as bearing and speed information which conforms to the streets being traveled. Next paragraph. The device arrived outside 34 Fairview at 12/24/38 where it remained static for about 30 seconds. Do you see that, sir?
I do, yes.
And did I read that correctly?
You did.
Did I read that correctly?
Sorry, yes, you did.
Yeah. So at the end of it says, show the device moving west from the roadside towards the house. That's what you wrote, correct?
Correct.
I would like you to, Mr. Wilk, if we could switch back to the timeline of Mr. Whiffin that we had published yesterday in Deck 79. Mr. Whiffin, if you could please, we just read that portion of your report that says at 25:30 the device bearing shifts to a westerly direction as location records also show the device moving west from the roadside towards the house. Did you put that in your timeline?
I did not.
It's kind of important information, isn't it?
I believe with the declining accuracy, the value that those records provided was more limited.
But it was important enough for you to write it in your report, but you didn't put it in the timeline, correct?
Correct.
Now, if you could continue on your report, page 29, Mr. Wilk, if we could put, and we're going to be flipping back and forth between the timeline in your report.
Okay.
If we could go to page 29, enlarge it, the text, so the jury is able to read it along with us. We're going to start from the top. So the next says, from the combination of device location and bearing, it does appear that the device started to move towards the house. However, since the bearing information appears to be based on the location records rather than the direction the device is facing, it is difficult to say with any degree of certainty if the device actually moved. Did I read that correctly?
You did.
So the first part is, again, a statement that the device has started to move toward the house. Now, if we could go to the next paragraph. This location data is immediately followed by 12 minutes of low accuracy records, which offer no reliable location information. So I just want to make sure I've got the time period here right. The 12 minutes is from 12:25, correct?
Yes.
And so correct. 12:25 plus 12 is 12:37. So the range we're talking about here is from 1225 through 1237, correct?
Correct.
Then, if we could go to, Mr. Wolk, please, back to the timeline, slide 82. So I want to discuss with you the very top entry, Health 123156, where you have the entry, start of health event, 36 steps, 25 meters, and yesterday we agreed 25 meters is approximately 84 feet, correct?
Correct.
And that is what you have in the timeline. Let's understand what that means. At that time period, 12/31/56, you recall writing in a March 2025 report that the device began moving for a period of 20 seconds.
Related to the location data, I believe.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, if we could, Mr. Wolk, go back to page 29 of the report. So what I want to do is go back to that paragraph up at the top from the combination of the device. From the combination of device location and bearing, it does appear that the device started to move toward the house. However, since the bearing information appears based on the location records rather than the direction the device is facing, it is difficult to say with any degree of certainty if the device actually moved. So you're talking about difficulty saying with certainty, correct?
Correct.
But it is certainly possible that the device was at that location and was moving toward the house. That's possible, correct?
Based on location data, yes.
Now what I'd like to do, please, is to go stay on that report. And the third paragraph says, the reason for such low accuracy location data at this time is not known, as there are many possible reasons why the accuracy was be reduced. There's a little grammar issue there, but
Correct.
In fairness to you, sir, we do that when we write long reports. But I think that your intention here is, why the accuracy is reduced at this point, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. This could include reasons such as the device entered a building-covered area, the result of weather conditions, geography, poor connectivity, or interference, to name a few. So those are the reasons you gave, which could contribute to some low accuracy, correct?
Correct.
And interesting, the very first reason you gave is that the device could be entering a building or covered area. And that phraseology could include a house, correct?
Correct.
It could include a garage attached to the house, correct?
Correct.
And it could include the house at 34 Fairview, and it could include the garage attached to the house at 34 Fairview, because both of those are buildings or covered areas, correct?
Correct.
Then you go on in the next paragraph to say it is known that the device was not being used at this time, and is this time that include that 1237, 12-minute range, 1225 to 1237?
Yes, it was not being used for location purposes.
Right. So that's another reason why, right, the accuracy could be a little bit on the lower side.
Correct.
Now, the next paragraph says, at 12:38:13, when the device begins recording higher, and that's relative to what it was recording before. It's not that it's high, but it's higher than what it was just moments before.
Correct.
The data centers on a location slightly closer to the house than the roadside, although several records show the same center coordinate with differing accuracy radii. Some of these location records are shown in the map below in white. So let's go down and look at what you had in your report for the area in white. In the area in white that you're referring to, there are two white circles, the largest one there. This, in fact, was a depiction that you included in your report on page 29, correct?
Correct.
Interesting and notable. You did not include that depiction in your timeline that you discussed with the jury yesterday, did you?
I did not know.
But it was important enough for you to put that depiction in your report, correct?
Correct.
And notably, a larger white circle covers a substantial amount of the house at 34 Fairview, correct?
Correct.
So, given your testimony on direct yesterday with Attorney Brennan, the phone of John O'Keefe, according to this depiction, could be anywhere within the largest white circle, correct?
Correct.
And this depiction was not offered by you or the Commonwealth in your presentation to the jury yesterday, correct?
Correct. Not in the PowerPoint.
Now, if we could go back, Mr. Wolk, to page 29 of your report, into the text, and if we can enlarge the text just a little bit, please, for the jury, Mr. Wolk. So the paragraph that begins with at 12:38:13, when the device begins recording higher accuracy information. Again, the data centers on a location slightly closer to the house than the roadside, although several records show the same center coordinate with differing accuracy radii. Some of these location records are shown on the map in white below. And I repeated that just to connect this part of the text to that diagram with a big white circle. Have I done that correctly?
Yes, correct.
Thank you, sir. The next paragraph. Over the next few hours, the GPS coordinate and the associated accuracy radius jumps around numerous times between the house and the road. Did I read that correctly?
Correct.
And therefore, over the next few hours, according to your report, the phone of John O'Keefe could be in the house, correct?
Based on the low accuracy information, yes.
The answer is yes.
Yes.
Yesterday, you discussed the Waze application with Ms. Attorney Brennan, correct?
Correct.
And you stated that Waze location data is more accurate than the data that comes from the Apple apps like health data and location, correct?
Incorrect, no.
I'm sorry. Is Waze location data, in your view, accurate location data?
There isn't really a thing such as Waze location data.
I'm having trouble here.
Waze location data doesn't really exist. Waze is requesting location data from location services, and location services would respond with high accuracy information.
Okay, I appreciate that correction. So when someone is using a Waze application, is the information they get through that Waze app accurate?
It tries to be accurate, yes.
And as a general matter, is the Waze application more accurate than the Apple information regarding location?
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing because it's coming essentially from the same source, correct?
Yes, Apple provides that information to Waze.
Right. So you had testified yesterday that at a certain point, the Waze application ceased functioning, correct?
Correct.
But just because it ceased functioning, the Apple applications were still taking effect, and that's why you could make this depiction on this item that is on the screen now, correct?
Correct.
So you then state, while location data from this data source, cached SQLite, is usually able to identify the location of the device with a high degree of accuracy and reliability, these records are so close that making a distinction between the device's actual location on the front garden is impossible, correct?
Correct.
Your words, impossible.
Correct.
Did you provide any of the information in that paragraph in your timeline or to the jury in your direct testimony yesterday?
Not in the PowerPoint, no.
Next paragraph. If the location records are limited to just the records between 0025, which is 1225, and 6 a.m. and with an accuracy radius of 10 meters or less, there are 46 records, all of which fall within the red circle shown below. And that is the only depiction there that you included in your timeline yesterday, correct?
Correct.
So you took one of two depictions in your summary of the location, this one in terms of your timeline presentation, correct?
Correct.
Now, in terms of the timeline, you testified that the flagpole and the fire hydrant are more down toward the small black circle. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
And yesterday, you rendered an opinion that you believed that the phone was mostly in the location by the flagpole and the fire hydrant, correct?
Objection.
I'm going to see counsel at sidebar for a minute, please.
Sidebar.
So yesterday, Mr. Whiffin, you focused your testimony and your opinions on the smaller black circle, correct?
Correct.
And you didn't discuss at all or disclose at all this depiction, and therefore didn't discuss or disclose at all the larger white circle, correct?
Not when discussing my overall opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
So the answer
Is no.
right. So the fair way to interpret, and this is what you put in your report, this is your depiction, is that, and based upon what you said yesterday, the phone could be at the very edge of the top of the circle, correct?
Correct.
And the phone could also be at any point, so you can, in theory, put a phone anywhere around the very edges of that entire circle, correct?
There's caveats to that, but yes.
Well, I'm just asking
Yes.
you that according to your testimony yesterday in this depiction, the phone could be anywhere in that location
Yes.
within the area of that white circle.
Correct.
I would like to now go back to the timeline, Mr. Wolf, where we had left off, which is slide 82. And at the very top entry, you have health, time 31:56, and then the description, start of health event, 36 steps, 25 meters, and we agreed about 84 feet. And this is where the device began moving toward the house for a period of 20 seconds. Is that correct?
It's the time that 36 steps started to be recorded. I've got no idea of the direction of travel.
I want to focus on the time, 12:31:56. Are you aware that a firm called Aperture, on behalf of the Commonwealth, has submitted a report that states that there was a trigger event at 12:31:56 that they refer to as the supposed collision? Are you aware of that?
Objection.
Sustained.
I recall seeing a
So you
report.
wanna-
Sorry.
You don't have to answer that.
Sorry.
Mr. Whiffin, are you familiar with a firm called Aperture?
I'm vaguely aware of them. I've heard of them once.
Are you familiar with a person by the name of Dr. Judson Welcher?
I'm not, no.
But you're familiar with the firm Aperture.
I am.
And do you know that the Aperture firm is working on this case?
That's the only reason I'm aware of this company.
Right. And do you know that the Aperture firm has used your data in your report? Do you know that?
I believe I saw something about that.
You believe you saw something, or do you know that they've used your data for a report in this matter?
I recall seeing a report. I don't recall whether it was my data that was being referenced.
Do you recall seeing a report from Aperture?
I do.
So you reviewed a report from Aperture.
Several months ago, yes.
And did you read the whole report?
It was a PowerPoint presentation, I believe.
Yes.
Yes, I reviewed it.
And you recall reading that entire PowerPoint presentation?
I don't recall what it said, but I remember reading through it.
Fair enough. Do you remember, as you sit here today, reading about a trigger of a number 1162-2 Do you recall reading that?
I recall seeing reference to a trigger event.
What did you understand the aperture firm that's retained by the Commonwealth? What do you understand they meant by trigger 1162.2?
Sustained.
Do you recall the specific slide that discussed a trigger?
Objection.
Do you recall that, Mr. Whiffin?
Very vaguely.
Would it help your recollection if I showed you a slide from that report that you said you reviewed to refresh your recollection?
All right, so why don't I see counsel at sidebar? Bring that with you, Mr. Alessi, please.
Sidebar.
Mayor, Your Honor.
You can approach.
Thanks. Mr. Whiffin, I'm handing you this document.
Thank you.
Tell me when you've had a fair opportunity to take a look at it. Mr. Whiffin, does that refresh your recollection with regard to an aperture report that discusses a trigger of 1162.2?
It does, thank you.
Pardon me?
It does, thank you.
And how does it refresh your recollection?
I remember seeing that several months ago.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. There's a blower on here that I'm having trouble hearing Mr. Whiffin. If you, sir, could bring the mic, it's not your fault. If you could bring it and speak a little louder, I'd appreciate it.
I recall seeing that as part of the report that I read 2 months ago.
And you recall the time of 12:31:38 now, correct?
Correct.
Let's go back to your timeline. So you just spoke about a trigger 1162.2 associated with a time of 12:31:38. And we are now at the timeline of 12:31:56, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
We are now going back to the timeline, deck 82. And you see up at the top where it says health 31:56. You see that, sir?
I do.
And then it says start of health event, 36 steps, 25 meters, which we have said is 84 feet or so. And this is when the device begins moving, correct?
Correct.
And that is after the trigger of 1162.2, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
Let's go to the next entry on the timeline, which is 12:32:03. You see that? That's Doppler. And then you state pocket state cleared. Is the phone at that time in a pocket?
It's impossible for me to say. I can say that the camera was blocked, but I don't know what was blocking it.
You're saying at this point the camera is blocked?
It had been blocked, and at that point it became unblocked.
So at this point it became unblocked from a previous block status, correct?
Yes.
Does there have to be some human manipulation of the phone at 12:32:03 for that to happen?
Technically not. There are scenarios that wouldn't require it.
Is it more likely than not that there had to have been some human contact in action for this pocket state clearing event to occur?
Yes.
12:32:04 is the next to type unlock, device unlock with Face ID. You see that, sir?
I do.
Is there some human action that has to occur for the device to unlock with Face ID?
Typically, you must be paying attention to the phone.
I'm sorry, sir.
You must be paying attention to the phone, assuming that that setting's enabled.
So someone had to be looking at the phone.
Yes.
12:32:05, application focus. What does that mean?
That the messages application was at the foreground of the device being used.
Next entry, 12:32:06. We discussed this, it says read message, pull behind me, and that is associated with a Jen McCabe. It's a Jen McCabe message of 31:47, correct?
Correct.
And does a human have to be reading that for that entry to be made?
The message needs to be on screen. If the conversation with Jen McCabe was already on screen when the device was unlocked, then that message would automatically be considered read.
Next entry, app lock, 12:32:09. end application focuses messages, and then it says device locked with lock button for the last time. That requires human interaction with the phone, correct?
Correct.
And it actually requires somebody to take the cell phone and press the side button to do that, correct?
It does, yes.
So there has to be some degree of coordination for that to occur, for a human to be able to have something that hits that button, correct?
That's certainly, yes.
Do you understand what the term fine motor skill means? Do you understand that? And would that person have to be using fine motor skills to do that?
Yes.
Next entry, 123216. End of health event, 36 steps, 25 meters, again, 84 feet. That is in your timeline because that's when you believe the end of the health event, the end of the 36 steps occurred, correct?
That is the time that the device data shows the end of the health event, yes.
Do you recall writing in your March 2025 report the following? Final health activity of note on John's phone can be seen to have occurred between 12:31:56 and 12:32:16, during which 36 steps were recorded, covering a distance of 25.4 meters, again, that 84 feet, according to healthdbsecure.db. Do you recall writing that?
I do.
And you used in your report 36 steps were recorded covering a distance of 25.4 meters or 84 feet, correct?
Correct.
You know a trooper named Nicholas Garino.
I'm aware of him, yes.
Are you a little more than aware of him? You've worked with him on this case, haven't you?
He sent me some of the files related to it, but further than that, I've got no relationship with him.
But isn't someone sending you files on a case you're working on, working with the person? Isn't that a fair conclusion?
It could be.
Do you recall reading any reports of Nicholas Garino?
Don't recall reading a report by Nick.
Does that mean you didn't read it, or you just don't recall reading it?
I honestly can't remember if I did or not. I remember some of the reports that I read for this case. I don't recall if one was by Nick.
Would it refresh your recollection if I showed you a portion of his report to determine whether you would have read it?
Please.
I am providing you with a document, and I would ask if that refreshes your recollection as to whether you read a report of Mr. Garino.
A report or this report?
This report. Thank you.
Don't recall ever seeing this report.
Have you ever had any conversations with Trooper Nicholas Garino?
Very briefly.
But you had, the answer is yes.
Yes.
Did Trooper Garino tell you that he measured the distance from the flagpole to the front door and it was 72 feet? Did he ever tell you that? Yeah.
Sustained.
Did you ever have a conversation with Trooper Nick Garino about the distance from the flagpole to the front door of 34 Fairview?
Maybe.
Maybe.
So
is it maybe then you had a conversation with him in which he stated to you that that distance is 72 feet?
It's maybe.
So if we go back to what we were discussing earlier about the steps and the distance covered, and this is in your report of March 2025, where we've talked about this. The final health activity of note on John's phone could be seen to have occurred between 12:31:56 and 12:32:16, during which 36 steps were recorded, covering a distance of 5.4 meters or 84 feet. 84 feet is greater than 72 feet, correct?
Correct.
So if the distance from the flagpole to the front of the house is 72 feet, and your report notes 36 steps covering a distance of 84 feet, that would put those steps within the house, correct?
It would.
Let's continue on with the timeline. Deck 83. We now have Doppler 1233:14 and then Doppler pocket state. Do you recall in your report adding a word to this that your report said pocket state detected? Do you recall writing that?
More than likely, yes.
Yes. But the detected word is not on that slide, is it?
It's not, no.
What does pocket state detected mean?
There was an active check by the Doppler function, and it detected that it was in a pocket state.
I would now like to change gears a bit and go to temperature with an iPhone. You recall that discussion in your direct testimony.
I do.
Thank you. iPhones don't record ambient or the environmental temperature where the phone may be at any given time, correct?
Correct.
But the iPhones, including the iPhone of John O'Keefe, log the temperature of the battery inside of it, correct?
Correct.
And as a result of that function, examiners and folks like you can use the battery temperature of an iPhone to identify increases or decreases in temperature within the environment that the iPhone is physically located in. True?
I believe so, yes.
And that's right out of your report, right? Your March 2025 report makes that very statement, correct?
Yes.
The battery temperature of an iPhone generally matches the pattern of the rise and the fall of the thermometer temperature, correct?
From my testing, yes.
And when an iPhone is in a locked state with little activity occurring on the device, the battery temperature is heavily affected by the ambient temperature in the environment, again, matching the pattern of the rise and the fall of the thermometer temperature, right?
Correct.
And what I just read is right out of your March 2025 report, correct?
It sounds like it is, yes.
And you actually established this in various temperature testing and test scenarios in your March 2025 report, correct?
Correct.
You had an appendix to your report that discussed two test scenarios with regard to temperature, correct?
Correct.
Can
And
I
that
just
was
ask,
appendix-
I'm sorry, Mr. Whiffin, do you have your report with you, sir?
I don't have a copy in front of me.
I'd be happy to provide him with a copy of his report so we can have him follow along.
I think that's great. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Would that be helpful, Mr. Whiffin?
Very, thank you. Thank you.
There you go. Mr. Whiffin, feel free at any time to reference that report.
Thank you.
And if you could, turn to page 77. So, are you ready, sir?
I am, yes.
Thank you. So let's look at test scenario one. Test scenario one, you took an iPhone, if I'm remembering correctly, same model as John O'Keefe's?
I believe John O'Keefe's was iPhone 11. I used an iPhone 10.
But sufficiently
Very similar.
similar for purposes of this experiment?
Correct.
Or this test?
Same iOS version.
Yes. So it's the same iOS version, the software inside the phone, just a different model.
Yes,
And it's a software that's important for this test, correct?
I believe so.
So you state that you placed the iPhone inside a freezer, correct?
Correct.
This is your experiment. When did you do test scenario one, approximately, the date?
This is a good question. It was sometime probably in December last year.
I'm sorry,
In December last year, I believe.
December 2024.
Correct.
So what you did here was you took the phone, you put it inside a freezer. What was the temperature of the freezer?
I actually don't know.
But it was a freezer.
It was freezing. Yes.
It is sort of your just regular freezer that everybody
a
has.
regular chest
Nothing
freezer.
special about it.
No.
Let's look at some of the data that you have from it. Let's start at the 1710 time frame where it's placed in the freezer and and we're going to go with Fahrenheit, if that's okay with you.
Of course, yes.
Thank you. 73.4 degrees, correct?
Correct.
And then if you go all the way down to the 1725, which would be 15 minutes, correct?
Correct.
Can you state what the drop in temperature is of the battery temperature in just 15 minutes in a freezer?
Approximately 50 degrees Fahrenheit.
So it drops 50 degrees Fahrenheit in just 15 minutes.
Correct.
And is it fair to say that if you do the math, that that's about a little over 3.5 degrees per minute? And if Your Honor, if he wants to use a calculator, or just accept my estimate, whatever Your Honor thinks is appropriate.
However you can answer the question, Mr.
I'm happy to accept your answer. That's fine.
Let me just make sure I have a moment, Your Honor. 3.33, would that sound fair, sir?
That sounds fair.
So it's about 3.3 degrees Fahrenheit per minute drop, correct?
Correct.
Now let's go to the next page of your report, page 78, where test scenario 2. And in test scenario 2, you took the same phone with the same software and you placed it outside at a temperature of 33.8 degrees Fahrenheit, correct?
Correct.
If we take the time that we start out with a control temperature, and then we've got a battery temperature at 9:02, and this is the battery temperature of the iPhone, correct?
Correct.
And we've got 66.2 degrees Fahrenheit, correct?
Correct.
So is it fair to call that a baseline for purposes of what this chart is?
The device had already been outside for 2 minutes at that point, but yes.
Okay, so we'll just refer to 66.2. And then if we go from 9:02 down to 9:15, a period of 13 minutes, correct?
Correct.
So at 33.8 degrees and 13 minutes, what is the drop in temperature in degrees? What's the drop?
Sorry, between the 9:02 and the 9:15?
Right. So does it go from 66.2 to 35.6?
It does.
And sir, so I don't have to have you do a math on the fly. I've calculated it, that drop at 30.6. Does that sound about right?
That sounds correct, yes.
So you got a drop of 30.6 degrees in just 13 minutes at an outside temperature of 33.8, correct?
Correct.
We're going to come back to this, but what I'd like to do is to compare these two test scenarios. The one we just saw at 33 degrees Fahrenheit, where it dropped 30.6 degrees in just 13 minutes, again at an outdoor temperature of 33.8, and then test scenario 1 in a freezer, where it dropped 61.2 degrees in just 15 minutes. Now let's go to the slide 60, which was in your slide presentation yesterday, of what you stated was the temperature change in the iPhone of John O'Keefe on the morning of January 29th. You with me, sir?
Yep.
Thank you. So if we start out at 12:13, we see a battery temperature of 82 degrees Fahrenheit, correct?
Correct.
Then it drops a little bit to 77, a little bit to 72. And what I want to focus on is keeping the starting point for my questions here at the 12:37 time period on the morning of January 29th. And that's 72 degrees Fahrenheit, correct?
Correct.
So if you take the time period from 12:37 to 12:53, that's a 15-minute interval, correct?
Correct.
The phone only drops 11 degrees Fahrenheit in 15 minutes, correct?
Correct.
If you then go to 12:37 and give it a little bit more time, down to 1:36 a.m., the temperature, and that's just about an hour, right?
Correct.
And the temperature drops from 72 to 50, only 22-degree drop in an hour, correct?
Correct.
Now, if you compare this chart in the drop in temperature, for example, 12:37, 12:53, in 15 minutes, it's only dropping 11 degrees, to your experiments, where with the first scenario with the freezer, it dropped 50 degrees in a 15-minute period. Is it correct to say that there was a much more dramatic drop in temperature in your test scenario 1 than what actually occurred on John O'Keefe's phone for the time period we just covered in January 29th?
Yes.
And then with regard to even test scenario 2, where the temperature is 33.8 degrees. That's the ambient, the outdoor temperature,
Correct.
right? That temperature, just above freezing, you've got a...
Sorry, that's below freezing.
I'm sorry?
It's below freezing.
What is freezing in Fahrenheit?
Don't know, but it's 0 degrees Celsius,
Right.
and it was -5 degrees Celsius at the time.
Right, but would you agree that, and I want to be fair to you because I know you use Celsius more than Americans who use Fahrenheit, but would you agree that 2 degrees Fahrenheit is the freezing point in Fahrenheit?
I honestly wouldn't know.
Okay, fair enough. So, in any event, in your experiment at 33.8 degrees Fahrenheit, you're getting a drop in your experiment in 13 minutes of 30.6 degrees, right?
Correct.
But much less drop in temperature on slide deck 60 of the actual iPhone of John O'Keefe on the morning of January 29th, correct?
Yes, correct.
Do you know what the temperature was in Canton in January 29th, 2022?
I do not know.
Don't you think that that would be an important piece of information in analyzing where the phone of John O'Keefe was on the morning of January 29th?
I didn't think it was.
So you didn't think it was important, even though you issued a report discussing the temperature of the iPhone, and you did 2 test scenarios, one in a freezer, one in an ambient temperature of slightly above 33 degrees, and you didn't think it important to take the final step to see whether there was anything to be gained from that comparison to determine where that phone was located?
My testing proved that the battery temperature is affected by ambient temperature. My report shows the data that was on the device. I also don't know the condition that the phone was found in, whether it was in a case, whether it was in a pocket. So to me, the ambient temperature in Canton at the time wasn't particularly relevant. I just wanted to show what data the device had recorded.
The information that you create from your digital forensics analysis, including everything that's in the slide, in your report, including battery... I'll go back to the question. In digital forensics, you work with law enforcement often, correct?
Correct.
And you work in law enforcement in investigating cases, do you not?
Yes.
And so oftentimes, the law enforcement is using your digital forensics information to help them solve cases, correct?
Correct.
You didn't suggest to anybody on law enforcement that they might want to take a look at this temperature information to assist in determining where this phone could have been by the temperature? You never raised that with them?
I did not.
And do you know whether any law enforcement person was aware that you had done all this temperature analysis?
It was in my report.
So you create a report as part of this case, and you deem the temperature important enough to do 2 test scenarios, important enough to put it in a slide presentation to this jury. Yet there's no discussion of that between you and any member of law enforcement as to what it means?
The details were provided in my report, and there was discussions, but it never came up as to say what was the temperature in Canton that night.
Oh, so there were discussions.
Not with law enforcement.
Oh, who
As
were the
part of my preparations for trial.
Oh, tell me about who you discussed this temperature information with.
It was with Hank.
You're hesitating, and I can't hear you. Who did you discuss
with
it
Hank?
Excuse me?
With Mr. Brennan.
Attorney Brennan?
Yes.
You discussed temperature with Prosecutor Brennan?
It was in my report.
It was in your report, but you said you discussed. Which is it?
It's in my report, and the discussion was that it is in my report. I'm not in a position to suggest that investigations take place and change based on my report findings.
Oh, sir, I'm not suggesting what you just stated. I'm just trying to get information about, you mentioned the verb discussed, didn't you, in your answer moments ago?
Yes.
Isn't discussed a verbal thing? It's not a written thing?
It was discussed in preparation for trial, yes.
Oh, so there was a discussion, a verbal discussion with Attorney Brennan about temperature in your preparation for trial.
Yes.
Was there any interest at all as to what this could actually mean for the potential location of Mr. O'Keefe's phone on these very important time periods in January 29th that might assist to determine at various times whether Mr. O'Keefe is in a covered building based upon the temperature rather than outside in a nor'easter on January 29th?
I'm sorry, what was the question there?
Yeah, the question is, was there any discussion about the investigative value of what you had done in determining where that phone could have been on key time periods on the morning of January 29th?
That wasn't part of the discussion, no.
It wasn't part of the discussion. We went through, you may recall in my questioning, in your report, where you stated that it was possible that the phone could be inside the house of 34 Fairview based upon that big white circle. You testified that the low accuracy at certain points could be because of it entering a covered building, correct?
Correct.
And you do a temperature experiment to track the very accurate temperature change of an iPhone, and it doesn't match up the actual data with either of your test scenarios, and you don't raise that with anybody. Objection.
Sustained. You can ask it differently.
Did you ever put together in any kind of form your test scenario 1, your test scenario 2, and the actual temperature chart of the iPhone of Mr. O'Keefe?
So how do you mean put it together? As in compare the two?
Exactly. Compare the two and reach any conclusions about location, because you spent time, did you not, sir? A lot of time in your reports on location of the phone.
Yes.
But yet, with all that data, all that testing, all the experiments that you didn't include in your slide presentation, and you didn't include in your report what that could mean for the location of the phone, did you, sir?
I'm struggling to see the comparison there.
Let me see if I can ask it in a different way. Nowhere in your slide presentation did you have any discussion yesterday about how your test scenario, did you bring up, by the way, in your slide presentation yesterday, your battery temperature at all, your tests?
Not the tests, no.
Right. So you didn't even raise yesterday in your presentation about where the phone might be located. You didn't even raise the experiments that you did, correct? Objection.
Sustained as to the terminology. Ask it differently.
Did you yesterday in your presentation to the jury in any way discuss your battery test scenario 1 and 2 in your March 2025 report?
I believe there was mention of testing, but not to the amount of detail to say what the testing was.
Right. So there was no detail given at all about
detail.
it. You just mentioned that it occurred, but no detail in your discussion at all. And are you aware, with regard to the battery temperature, that battery temperature in investigations can be used to determine locations of phones at certain times? Are you aware of that?
No.
So you have never used battery temperature information in all your years in any way for any investigation of a case in determining location of a phone?
Again, I don't see how you can determine location of a device from a temperature reading, other than to say whether it was inside or outside.
So battery temperature and the chart that you gave that is up there, in your opinion, has no relevancy to the topic of where a phone might be to investigators in a case? Is that what you're saying? Objection.
Is that what you're saying, Mr. Whiffin?
I'm saying I can't take a temperature reading and make a determination about a GPS location based on the temperature reading.
That's not my question, though,
Okay.
sir, and I appreciate your answer, though. My question is, you work with law enforcement investigators regularly,
Yes.
correct? Isn't this information of potential relevance based upon your experience with investigations? Isn't this information at least potentially relevant in investigations?
I believe it could be. That's why I included it in my report.
Thank you. But you didn't include a discussion of it in your testimony yesterday, correct?
Correct.
I just want to be clear on a final point as regards temperature. Were you aware of the temperature in Canton on January 29th, 2022?
I know it was a blizzard, but I don't know what the temperature was.
Mr. Whiffin, if you bear with me, I just
Of
have
course.
one final set of questions. If you look at this chart, and you, under January 29th at 12:13, battery temperature of 82 degrees, but you then go down, what I'd like to start with is 12:37 again, and this is a key time point, 12:37. You've got a temperature of 72 degrees. And then 8 minutes later, the temperature only drops 6 degrees, correct?
Correct.
Again, using 12:37 is what I refer to as the baseline. You go all the way down, and you see to 12:53 a temperature drop of only 11 degrees. Do you see that?
I do.
Thank you. The final data point on this slide, Mr. Whiffin, and thank you for bearing with me on it. At 1:36, there's a temperature of 50 degrees Fahrenheit, correct?
Correct.
Several hours later, at 6:06, 4.5 hours, the temperature drop is only 7 degrees, correct?
Correct.
Mr. Whiffin, I'm handing you Exhibit 42.
Yes.
Do you recognize Exhibit 42 from your March 2025 report?
I do.
And sir, just take a fair time to familiarize yourself with the exhibit before I start asking you questions. They're going to be very brief. So what I want to do is just cover the information here. Whose phone is the subject of the entries on this chart?
This is John's phone.
And if we start with the first entry, reading left to right, 12:14:36, end time 12:15:20, incoming call from Jen McCabe, duration 44 seconds. You see that, sir?
I do.
You see, and is that a call that is answered?
Yes.
If you go to the next entry, 18:47, this 12:18:47 to 12:19:23, outgoing call duration 36 seconds to Jen McCabe, duration 36 seconds. Do you see that, sir?
I do.
Is that a call that is answered?
Difficult to say. That could be a outgoing call that lasted 36 seconds of ringing. I believe it was answered.
Well, how is it that you can tell the first one was answered but not the second one?
Because it's an incoming call.
Okay, fair enough. So if we go to the third entry, 12:29:44, 12:29:51, incoming call from Jen McCabe. You see that, sir?
I don't mean to interrupt. Could I ask about the display?
Sidebar. Well, this seems like an appropriate time to take our morning recess, so why don't we take a 15 or 20-minute recess? Whenever you're ready, Mr. Alessi.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Whiffin, we had started going through the top three entries. The first one you had indicated was answered. The second one you, as I understand it, could not tell. Is that correct?
Correct.
So I want to now go to the last one for this Exhibit 42. It's reading from left to right, 12:29:44, 12:29:51, incoming call duration at seconds from Jen McCabe. Again, it restates duration 8 seconds.
Correct.
Given that it's an incoming call, you can conclude that that was answered, correct?
Correct.
Mr. Whiffin, you should feel free to look at the hard copy Exhibit 42 if that's more helpful to you. But what I want to do is to focus on start time 12:33:35, reading across activity, incoming call, unanswered, and then to the right, Karen Reed. Do you see that, sir?
I do.
And do you see the same types of entries for 3409 and 3438?
I do.
And those calls are unanswered, correct?
Correct.
So in contrast to the first one at 1436 and then skipping one to 2944, those are answered, but then starting 3335 and 3409, those are unanswered, correct?
Correct.
Mr. Whiffin, when did you start working on this case? What was the date, approximate date?
On this case or on this exhibit?
On this case?
Approximately September 2023.
So over a year and a half.
Correct.
How many times have you been in Norfolk County?
This is my second time.
You were here once previously.
Correct.
Do you recall yesterday discussing what you had done with an iPhone, driving around and then moving it with your hand?
Correct. Yes.
In the year and a half that you've been on this case, did you ever take an iPhone and do the same activity on the route that you were discussing yesterday between 34 Fairview and One Meadows?
I actually did it on Sunday night.
I'm sorry?
I did it 2 days ago on Sunday night.
And with regard to your time on this case, what was the results of that?
I object, Your Honor. I'll need to be heard briefly.
Sorry?
I object. I need to be.
Okay. Point over, please.
Sidebar.
May I, Your Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Whiffin, I am now going to proceed to a different topic. Do you recall discussing the Google search, how long to die in the cold?
I do.
And you discussed that in your direct testimony, correct?
I did.
You were a police officer for years before getting into the data forensic analysis of cell phones, correct?
Correct.
You were a response officer of the South Yorkshire Police from 2004 to 2009.
Correct.
You continued policing with the Calgary Police, working patrol, correct?
Correct.
You work frequently with law enforcement.
I do.
Indeed, law enforcement is the predominance of your work, correct?
Probably about 80% of the work. Yes.
What percent?
About 80%.
80.
80.
Your work is used in investigations for law enforcement, correct?
Sometimes, yes.
In your area of work, you use and apply various forensic methods that are extracted. That data is extracted from a cell phone, correct?
Correct.
And you have various forensic methods to analyze that data, correct?
Correct.
And that data that you analyze is often used by law enforcement in their investigations, right?
It can be, yes.
It can be, but it also is from your experience, correct?
I'm sorry, are we talking about my actual analysis or analysis that's created by the tools that me and Cellbrite create?
Your analysis.
Okay, my analysis is typically used in investigations, yes.
So it's typically, your analysis is typically used by law enforcement.
On the cases I work, yes.
Right. And you know that is going to be the case oftentimes when you're doing your analysis, correct?
Correct.
And forensic software is used to gain access to people's devices, correct?
Correct.
Such as cell phones, right?
Correct.
And there's something called an extraction process from a cell phone that you discussed in your direct testimony.
Yes.
Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I want to cover, because it would be covering old ground, but I want to cover some of it.
Okay.
It's important, is it not, that the extraction process on a cell phone be performed correctly.
It is, yes.
And that's so that the data that's extracted from a cell phone is complete, correct?
Correct.
So that the data is correct,
Correct.
and so that the data is reliable.
Correct.
And data forensic examiners and people in your area of work need to ensure that the extraction file has not been tampered with, correct?
Correct.
Because if an extraction file has the possibility of tampering, then the information and data from it can be unreliable, correct?
Correct.
And there's a generally accepted methodology for how to perform an extraction of data from a cell phone, correct?
Typically, yes.
One of the key ways to determine whether the data extracted from a cell phone is valid and has integrity is to evaluate whether the extraction process created what is called a hash value, correct?
Correct.
And a synonym for a hash value is a hash signature, correct?
Correct.
And a hash value or hash signature, I'm just going to use hash value. Is that acceptable to you?
I'm fine with that.
Thank you. So a hash value is a unique and usually consists of a long string of numbers and letters that's generated from the data file from a cell phone using a computer algorithm, right?
Correct.
And one of the computer algorithms is SHA 256, right?
Correct.
And is it a fair analogy to state that a hash value can be thought of as fingerprint for a data file from a cell phone?
Yes.
And is it also a rough analogy that a hash value can function like the seal on a milk container? In other words, if you open the milk container and the seal's broken, that the same analogy can be provided that if you don't have a valid hash value, then there is a question with regard to the contents of a cell phone, just as there might be concern about contents of a milk carton. Is that a fair general analogy?
Yeah, if the hash doesn't match, then something has changed in the data.
So if the hash doesn't match or you can't determine a valid hash file, it's sort of like opening up a milk container and that seal cap is off, correct?
Okay, I'll accept that.
Thank you. Now, if a data file is altered in any way, the hash algorithm is going to produce a different letter and numeric string than the previous hash value for that same alleged data, correct?
Correct.
So that alphanumeric number is important because it can, if it's different, then it means something happened to that data, correct?
Correct.
And isn't it important for examiners, anybody in data forensics, to know whether or not the data they're looking at has a valid hash value?
It would depend, in my opinion, on the origin of the data.
But you would agree that it's much better to have a valid hash value for data than not. Correct?
I'd like to see the hash value match, yes.
You would like to see the hash value matching,
Yes.
correct? Now, once data from an iPhone is properly extracted and you get a hash value, then the examiners of the data seek to pass and decode the data to try and make some sense of the data in a more user-friendly format so that a report can be created for investigators, correct?
Correct.
Do you recall preparing a report for the iPhone belonging to Jen McCabe dated December 2024?
I do, yes.
And in that report, you discussed your views of a Google search of how long to die in the cold, correct?
Correct.
And in that report, you rendered various conclusions about that Google search, correct?
Correct.
And you rendered various conclusions about what is called a timestamp.
Correct.
And the timestamp that was in question was 2:27:40 a.m. on January 29th on Jen McCabe's phone, correct?
Correct.
And the question that you were looking at is that timestamp that appeared in the data, that timestamp of 2:27:40 a.m., whether that belonged to the Google search, house long to die in the cold, correct?
Correct.
And you testified yesterday with regard to that very issue, correct?
Correct.
Now, in your report of December 2024, you discussed the hash value of that cell phone, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Yesterday, in your direct testimony, you didn't mention anything about the hash value with regard to Jen McCabe's phone, did you?
Not in my testimony, no.
The answer is no, correct? No. However, isn't it correct that in your report of December 2024, you had an issue with the hash value from the data from that phone?
I didn't have an issue with the hash value at all, no.
So you didn't note that it was not possible with the gray key extraction as the PDF containing the extraction has its value, that it was unsigned? That was not an issue in your report?
The hash value matches, but because I didn't do the extraction, I'm unable to actually validate that was an original hash and hadn't been modified.
Exactly. So you didn't do the extraction, but you couldn't validate the hash value, could you?
No.
So you couldn't determine whether or not any of the data on that cell phone of Jen McCabe had been tampered with, correct?
I take a holistic view of the data and try to find anomalies and didn't see any that raised any flags.
That wasn't my question, sir.
Okay.
I'll try it a different way. You concluded that the hash value was unsigned, correct?
Correct. They were always unsigned. Okay, apologies.
You concluded that the hash value was unsigned, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. And you went on, did you not, in your report to say that this hash value could be used as a suggestion of authentication, but cannot be guaranteed 100%, correct?
Correct.
Did you discuss any of that doubt, that suggestion of authentication, but can't be guaranteed 100% at all in your direct testimony yesterday?
I didn't know.
And again, hash values are very important concepts for data forensic examiners, correct?
For integrity, yes.
Do you know the chain of custody of Jen McCabe's iPhone?
I don't, no.
So you don't know the chain of custody of her iPhone. You have an unsigned hash value, and you can't guarantee the hash value authentication, correct?
No.
The objection's overruled.
Not from the hash value, no.
Go back to the 22740 timestamp and the question of whether that timestamp is associated with a Google search, house long to die in the cold. You understand there is a dispute as to whether that search was performed at 2:27:40 a.m. as the timestamp states, or whether that was performed later in the morning, say around 6:23 a.m., correct?
Correct.
You understand there's a dispute.
Yes.
And do you understand that the defense asserts that that timestamp means what it says? The Google search occurred at 2:27:40 a.m.
We're going to allow it. You understand that?
I do.
I didn't hear your answer, sir.
I understand.
You understand that?
Yes.
So there are various data forensic tools, are there not, to evaluate what is called an artifact, this timestamp, correct?
Correct.
And those data forensic tools include Celebrite tools, your company's tools.
Yes.
And some of those Celebrite tools are called Physical Analyzer.
Correct.
And then you have another tool, I believe, called Insights.
Insights is a suite that includes Physical Analyzer.
Okay,
But yes,
so it's Insights, it's a suite.
essentially the same tool.
Essentially the same tool. So this Insight, well, essentially, but they're two different tools, correct?
The two different versions of the same tool.
Thank you. Two different versions of the same tool.
Yes.
But there are other tools from other companies, are there not, sir?
There are.
And a competitor of Celebrite that can be used to analyze that 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp and to potentially resolve that dispute of whether the Google search "How Long to Die in the Cold" occurred at 2:27:40 a.m. or later at 6:23 or so a.m. There's other companies and tools that can be used for that, correct?
Correct.
And isn't one of the companies that can be used a competitor of Celebrite called Magnet Forensics?
Correct.
And they have a tool called Axiom, AXIOM, that evaluates questions such as this, correct?
They do.
And is Magnet Forensics a reputable company?
They are.
Am I correct that yesterday you essentially said that as of today, no Celebrite tool, no Insight suite such as Physical Analyzer, today shows that 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp?
Correct. If you use any version from the last approximately year, that timestamp won't show up.
It won't show up as you sit here today.
Correct.
But that's not always been the case
Correct.
with regard to Celebrite forensic tools, correct?
Correct.
As a matter of fact, in the first proceeding in this case, in June of 2024, when you testified under oath, the situation with the forensic tools was Celebrite Forensics Insights did not show the 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp, but another version of Physical Analyzer did show it, correct?
Correct.
In that second program, that second tool, Physical Analyzer, not only showed it at 2:27:40 a.m., but it showed it as a deleted state, correct?
It's a deleted record, yes.
A deleted record.
Yes.
Did you mention that yesterday in your direct testimony?
I don't believe so.
You don't believe so?
No, we changed it since then.
Exactly. You changed it since then.
Yes.
Your company removed it
Yes.
after the first trial.
Before the first trial.
Well, you removed it from one tool before the first trial, but you didn't remove it from the other Physical Analyzer program, did you?
Up until the following version was released.
No, I'm talking about the time of trial when you were testifying.
I appreciate that. There's some complexities with how we released the software, which resulted in one being released several weeks later and one being released several weeks earlier.
At the time of trial,
Yes.
last year in June, when you were testifying under oath, one of the Celebrite tools showed the timestamp of 2:27:40 a.m., correct?
Correct.
But that timestamp doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't exist today, does it?
Correct.
Celebrate removed it.
Yes.
You mentioned
Could I see counsel at sidebar for just a minute, please?
Sidebar.
Go ahead,
So-
Mr. Alessi.
Thank you, Your Honor. So with regard to the first proceeding, there was one Celebrite forensic tool that still showed the 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp,
Correct.
and it was shown in a deleted state.
The record was deleted, yes.
The record was deleted. And then after that, Celebrite outright removed the timestamp from so none of its programs had. Correct?
Again, if I could explain a little bit about how it works.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
If you could just respond to my question. Is that correct?
The timestamp's been removed, yes.
However, the competitor of Celebrite that we just talked about, Magnet Forensics Axiom,
Yes.
that program at the first proceeding showed the 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp, correct?
Correct.
And as a matter of fact, as you sit here today, the Magnet Forensics program, Axiom, still shows the 2:27:04 a.m. timestamp, correct?
As far as I know, yes.
And Magnet Forensics Axiom is a reputable company, correct?
Correct.
Celebrite removed that 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp, which is in a deleted state, in response to issues raised in the first proceeding, right?
It was changed because of the research that I did, and that was verified by the forensic research group.
But the issue arose because of what had come up in the first proceeding, correct?
In the first investigation prior to the proceeding, yes.
In the first investigation in this case, correct?
Yes.
So Celebrite, after the first proceeding, after the investigation, just outright went and removed the timestamp.
It's not unusual to change the
I
code.
didn't ask if it, I just asked whether they
we removed it.
but magnet forensic axiom still shows that 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp, right?
Again, they refer to it differently, which is why they can
But they
do that.
still show it.
They do still show it.
Finish the answer.
So,
Sorry. Let him finish the answer. Is that what you said, Mr. Whiffin?
yeah, my apologies, but I'm having trouble hearing, but I'll pause more just to make sure you're done. In that 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp, the dispute is whether it's associated with the search "House Long to Die in the Cold," correct?
Correct.
Talk a little bit more about the first proceeding in this case. In terms of your testimony under oath in that first proceeding, do you recall stating that it was your opinion as to whether that 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp was associated or not with the Google search "House Long to Die in the Cold"?
I believe so.
Right. So you called it your opinion.
Yes, probably.
You didn't describe it as a fact. You described it as your opinion, correct?
Correct.
Because you realize that there are other fair interpretations of that timestamp and when the Google search occurred, correct?
I think even if I believe it's a fact, it's my opinion.
Right. So it's your opinion.
Yes.
Do you recall stating that there's plenty of other evidence on that extraction that shows what activity was occurring at 2:27:40? You recall that?
Correct.
And you use the word evidence, correct?
Correct.
But that evidence on the Celebrate program is now gone, correct?
No,
It's not gone?
it's not gone.
So the 2:27:40 timestamp still exists in Celebrate programs?
Sorry, are we talking about the additional evidence that shows what
Oh, no.
happened at 2:27:40?
No, I'm just asking whether
Okay.
I thought we had that clear, but I thought, is the 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp show up on any Celebrate program as you sit here today?
The decoded value does not show a timestamp for
Thank you.
that artifact.
Third, does your work include shaping how examiners will see the data when they open it?
Yes.
So you shape how the data is going to be, correct?
Yes, we have
Yes?
ways to create the data so it's usable. Yes.
So the answer is
shape it.
yes,
Yes.
you shape the data.
Yes.
These various forensic tools, Celebrate, Insight Suite, including Physical Analyzer, Magnet Forensics Axiom, these are all tools, and we know that no one has access to the Apple source code on iPhones, correct?
Correct.
And the best source of information about what may be happening inside of an Apple iPhone would be if one could get the source code and look into the source codes to see what's actually happening, correct?
Correct.
So what happens is in data forensics, because Apple considers it proprietary and people can't access the source code, there's these various data forensic tools that in some ways try to serve as a surrogate, given the fact that there's no access to source code, correct?
Correct. That's fine.
So the best information would come from the Apple source code, but nobody has access to that, or few people do. Therefore, these other forensic tools are used.
Correct.
So sometimes examiners have to give opinions like you give because you don't have access to the source code, correct?
Correct.
So it's your opinion, oftentimes, with regard to ultimate conclusion.
Based on research and testing. But yes,
Not
it's an opinion.
100% absolute certainty because you don't have access to the source code, correct?
Correct.
You have a moment, Your Honor, to switch topics, please.
Yes.
Thank you. Before I do switch topics, a couple points on the 2:27:40 timestamp, if I may, Mr. Whiffin. The Google search in question associated with that timestamp, the dispute over that, is "House Long to Die in the Cold," correct?
Correct.
And you understand, sir, do you understand the significance if Jen McCabe made that Google search, "House Long to Die in the Cold," at 2:27:40 a.m. instead of 6:23 a.m.? Do you understand the significance of that?
Of course.
Sustained.
He said yes, Your Honor.
Sorry. I said sustained.
Oh, thank you. I didn't hear that.
Jurors, strike any answer that may have come.
What do you understand to be the significance of the dispute over 22740 timestamp?
Sustained.
Mr. Whiffin, with regard to the 22740 AM timestamp, have you looked at any forensic tools to answer that question other than Celebrite tools and your tool Ardex?
I've used Axiom as well.
So you used Axiom, and so did you therefore see that 22740 AM timestamp still appeared?
Yes.
Did you discuss that with the jury yesterday, that you analyzed the Axiom program and that 22740 AM timestamp still appears?
I didn't. No,
You did not.
I did not.
Could we please, with the court's permission, put the PowerPoint presentation back up and go to deck 26? Mr. Whiffin, does an iPhone discriminate between whether it's in a car, bus, a bicycle, or walking?
It can, but I don't have the research on that.
So as you sit here today, you can't say that an iPhone can tell the difference between a car, bus, bicycle, or walking, correct?
The iPhone can, but I haven't researched that data fully enough to understand it forensically.
So you as
I
you sit here,
can't, but
you
the phone
can't.
can.
Does an iPhone merely register movement? Let me rephrase that. Does an iPhone register movement?
It does.
Do you recall yesterday discussing movement at a speed of about 1.4 miles per hour at 12:24:37 a.m. on
Yes.
January 29th, 2022?
I do.
A person walking at a normal to even a slow pace can walk at approximately 1.4 miles per hour. Is that correct?
It sounds reasonable.
And does it sound reasonable that a normal speed of walking is between 2 and 4 miles per hour?
Reasonable.
Switching topics, Your Honor, if I could have a moment. When you were examining Jennifer McCabe's phone, you used an operating system called iOS 14, correct?
That's one of the versions of iOS I used, yes.
That was one of the versions.
Yes.
Do you understand that Jen McCabe's phone was actually using iOS version 15?
Yes, I do. 15.2.1.
15.2?
2.1.
Thank you. And do you recall saying, with regard to iOS 15.1, etc., that the iOS operating system, your words, had fundamentally changed, correct?
Correct.
Now, with regard to, we're back to Jen McCabe's phone, we're back to 22740, the issue of deletions. You stated yesterday that deletion occurred after January 31 of 2022, is that correct?
Correct.
But you couldn't determine how that deletion occurred with certainty, correct?
Correct.
And you gave 3 possibilities that you analyzed, correct?
3 or 4, yes.
3 or 4. And one of them was deleted by user, correct?
Correct.
Another one was that the search occurred but never loaded.
That would be the reason that there was no data found in the history.db file.
But that was another of the 3 or 4 reasons, correct?
That wouldn't cause the deletion of the record
Right,
necessarily.
Right. And then you discussed those possibilities, but you can't state with certainty how that deletion occurred, can you?
Correct.
You have doubts about how it occurred, is that fair?
Yeah, I have an idea how it occurred, but I can't prove it.
I'm sorry. I didn't,
Yeah, no, it's okay.
No, please finish. I want to make sure you finish.
I have an idea of how it occurred, but I've not been able to replicate it. So my idea is unsubstantiated.
So is it fair to say you have some doubts
Yes.
about how the deletion occurs?
That's fair.
And you believe your doubt is reasonable
Yes.
under the circumstances?
Yes.
Your Honor, that is the extent of my questions of the witness at this time.
Okay.